required on how to handle any Saturday collection during the summer months of June and July if the board still feels that's warranted. So we have seen 6 people on average on Saturdays, and to me it's not worth the cost of bringing someone in. There might be other options out there for the community, so especially since we pick up on Mondays and Fridays during the summer.
Well, I'm interested also in number 3, the alternate number 3, because you said you had done some investigating into that. I'd like to see that maybe pursued one step further. I think one of the things we would probably have to do is look into zoning. I know a question has been raised over the past year about the actual site of the compactor, if it's in compliance under current zoning regulations. And I don't know if you all had investigated that yet or not. Or just, you know, if you even touched on it when you were looking at what would have to be done.
No, because they were put in prior to, and I want to make sure I say this right, prior to adoption of Buncombe County's zoning, we were allowed to keep those in place. What we were told during, I think it was this last year, was that we certainly cannot move them any closer to the well site.
Okay.
And in fact, what we would end up doing is if we went to this type of system, we would actually lose one of the compactors, if you read that in there. So it sort of helps out in that aspect.
Would it be grandfathered in? One of the compactors be able to be grandfathered?
Right, as long as we don't, is it mess with the use, is that right?
If you don't cease that use, it's grandfathered use.
Okay.
So we can continue to operate.
Okay.
And just to clarify, alternate 2 suggested closing the site. So it would not be available, only the handling area was proposed as being available.
So if we close the site, we would lose the ability to be able to grandfather in the compactor?
Depending on which alternative. If you remove the compactors altogether, that's correct.
Okay. And once they're gone, they're gone?
They're gone.
Okay.
So, for example, if you went with option or alternative 1, which was the compactor truck, and we started moving everything to Buncombe County or to Asheville, it would, I'm guessing, be more difficult to put those compactors back in place. Not impossible, but maybe more difficult to put those compactors back in place.
Okay.
And I have some questions related to the alternate 3 that Commissioner Benson mentioned, because that's an expensive proposition at $50,000. What kinds of modifications to the current site would be necessary for compliance with accessibility for citizens to actually enter the site?
Well, that would be involve concreting the parking area for the trucks and for people to actually walk in and out. Moving the fence in to provide parking to get everybody off the road. Of course, the electric, however you decide on your gate access for people. And we have to have handicap ramps for people to actually get up to a certain level for them to put garbage into the compactor, recycle, and cardboard. And one of the ramps ended up being very long and very expensive. And we have to put safeties on one of the compactors so somebody can open it and close it, you know, handicap, and also kill switches to where when they open it, if somebody decides to stick an arm in there, it disables it. So that's pretty much the whole summary of everything we have to put in place.
So Barry, all those things would be necessary if in any way we allow individuals to enter the compactor site?
Yes, ma'am. Opening that site to the public would have to have all of them upgrades. And you got a handrail, a safety handrail on the ramps. It's, you know, pretty intense on the rules. Once I ciphered through a book that the regulations that David pointed me at, it's pretty intense on bringing everything up to par.
Well, I'm familiar with a site that looks like that because that's what we had where we lived before we moved here, and there were ramps and steps and platforms beside every dumpster. I was just amazed they could get the dumpsters in and out with all that infrastructure. You know, you got to be careful backing that thing in because you have all this.
It's going to be very tight. Once we get our width on the ramps and everything, it's going to be very tight to maneuver compactors, trucks, concrete's just gotta be so thick to handle the large
The weight,
trucks,
that was my
the
next
weight.
question, was you're not talking about an asphalt parking lot here.
No, they recommend, they said the asphalt would roll up in the summertime.
Right.
You turn a wheel, it's gonna roll up. So they're recommending, 8 inches of concrete to hold that weight. So it's pretty expensive to put that down.
Our neighbors down the street did away with theirs because it was such a mess.
You mean Black Mountain?
Yes. They tried it, I don't know how many years, but it wasn't long and they shut it down.
Well, you have more information to think about this month, and you have a meeting on the 24th. So you'll have more information next month's meeting.
I was gonna say, make sure, is there any, I heard that do a little more research on 3, I'm hearing option 2. Are you requesting staff, do you want any additional information provided at your October meeting?
Personally, I just like time to digest it a little bit.
And I think direct cost of the bags, when you said it's a box of 5, just so we have that kind of in the back of our mind, what we'd be asking ourselves and others to pay for. The obviously putting a fenced area to put the bags in is not a big cost, but it is a cost, so on that option.
Well, we really already have that in place.
Okay.
That would be,
And Ron, when you said vendor access, you're not talking about dispensing them from town hall, are you?
for the bags?
For the bags, yes. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir, actually we are.
Okay.
We'd also they also suggested the general store
Yeah.
here, but, I don't think Ingles would help us because they're only for Montreat, but they might, or the little store down here at the corner. But,
Pick up your beer, pick up your bags.
Just a couple of comments for me. I really don't find myself getting any younger, and I can't imagine not having curbside service, at this point in time. And in fact, I would be the first one to step up and continue my backdoor service. At one point in time when we moved up here, Joe, who's sitting out there in the audience, said, "Oh, we don't need this backdoor service, and we can take it down." And I said, "Oh, no, that's the best money we spend. And we don't have to worry on a cold, snowy day about getting it up and down our driveway." So thank you to the staff for taking care of that. So I have questions about eliminating curbside service for this population. I have real doubts about that. Also would like to get some more information about, as we talk about going to the bag system, and just having anyone come up at any point in time to ask a member of our staff to go and open it, how that's really going to work, as you're trying to get your daily business of the work of the town being done, your meetings. I really would like to get some feedback on how you actually see that working. We have 30,000 annual visitors a year, and that's a lot of people asking to bring a bag of trash. So how that would actually work, what are the hours? I mean, I just don't understand that process. I would like some more information on that.
now, or
No, not now. I mean, as I said, these are things that we don't have money in the budget to do this fiscal year. These are going to be, the big questions are going to be for the next fiscal year, which will be in earnest talks as we get into January and April. I mean, we may be able to do some short-term kind of things, but, just with hours and staffing, but in terms of what kind of truck you're going to buy, will be a big decision. But the bag system, if we're going to consider it, how's that really going to work? I just don't understand it.
Just thinking about it, I'd rather see the bags sold town hall or at the store, not outside the gate. Because that opens it up for people to buy them from Black Mountain and bring the trash out.
we did have that conversation, that's a possibility.
Oh, that would be disastrous.
It's still a possibility that they could go up to the general store and buy them.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
But
we'll ID them.
what the nice thing is they can't bring their furniture and bed springs and all the other mess that they've thrown in the dumpster when it was open. Gas grills, you know, to clog up the compactor. So the bag limits what you can throw away.
Can you tell what we're doing right now? Can you repeat for me what are the hours and so forth right now?
Sure. Right now, let's see, June through August, we were open Tuesday through Friday from 1 to 5, Saturdays 7 to 12. However, as you know, right now, we're just open Tuesday through Thursday from 1 to 5. So the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're closed now, effective September 1st. And so we still have the charges in place, and we will continue to do that until the board changes direction or tells us otherwise.
That was one thought I had was, are we best using our town staff to be open those 3 afternoons a week for, from 1 to 5? I'd like to see us think about, I know Perry Sproul submitted a thought for a temporary service, and that was to have our regular Mondays and yard trash on Wednesdays like we do, but just have the compactor area open 1 afternoon a week, as opposed to the 3 afternoons a week. I'd like to see what the staff has to say about that. If that would make better use of our staff, I don't see having a volunteer run that center. That runs into all sorts of insurance and liability issues. But since we already have staff people who are doing it or switching off, could you all look at that as a possibility for the temporary until we come up with a final solution?
Well, I'll speak for all 3 of us, and they can
Okay.
jump in if I misquote them. But you know, during conversations we've had, we are losing significant work hours by keeping someone down there for such little usage. And so, you know, I think all of us would say even one day wouldn't matter. You're still right now not going to get enough usage out of the site to keep it open. You could try it open from 3 days to 1 day, but you see we're getting an average of 3 or 4 a week now, which is just, you're providing a service that's costing you, you know, $400, at least $400 a week for 2 or 3 people. So that's the trade-off. You know, from our standpoint, we'd rather just close the site.
I'm not quite ready to be at that point, as long as we have a compactor site. Perhaps we can think about some sort of intermediate level, more along, and again, that would certainly work for the winter season, okay? More along what Commissioner Benson is suggesting. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Sprouls had suggested having it open on 1 day later in the week, Thursdays. I certainly think having it open 3 days a week, it's costing a lot of time, staff time, which is money for the Montreat taxpayer if the usage is not there. But I have heard two things sort of as I have talked with the community. With rare exception, and there have been some exceptions, there has been little interest in raising taxes to keep open the town site as it was before, okay? There have been some who said, we pay for convenience, we pay for cell phones, we pay for cable TV, we pay for internet. Money is not as important as services. So but that's been the minority of what I have heard. So I sort of would like to sort of see us entertain maybe later, you know, in this discussion, opening it maybe the Thursday for 3 hours. And I would like us to entertain also the fact whether we will keep the fee schedule or whether just make that open on that much more limited basis. I'd like to have that as part of the discussion on a much more limited basis during that. It still needs to be staffed. It can never be open access to the public. And perhaps that would be some way of bridging these decisions of where we're going. And I don't want to over micromanage, even though I love to do so, as you know by now. But perhaps some discussion could be that if people are bringing in on a more limited basis, that they would just sign their name and their Montreat residents. You know, really, I don't want our staff to ever be in a position of challenging someone of there, but they would just simply, we would know where it's coming from, and it would give us a sense of whether it's coming from investment properties or coming from private individuals. And we do have a community here in which there's a lot of coming and goings, because a lot of us are retired, you know, and there's a lot of coming and goings, and so having a late in the week kind of access while we still have a compactor site would be a service that would be nice if we could afford to provide it.
Anyone else? Okay, we have quite a bit to think about this month coming up. And then we'll add to that the discussions that Ron has with the staff from MRO and the college. Under new business, we have the Montreat Board of Adjustment meeting summary. And there's a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we request that the zoning administrator research better options for addressing the requirements of the Fair Housing Act in the ordinances of the town of Montreat, and that the zoning administrator send those options to the Planning and Zoning Commission to draft recommended ordinance changes for the town council to consider, and that this review and the one previously requested on front and back building setbacks be addressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as soon as possible.
Second.
Discussion?
And I'll speak to it first. My concern about this came from attending the recent Board of Adjustment meeting. And it seemed at that meeting that we were needing to use our variance process to make reasonable accommodation for the use of property by a person with disabilities. The variance process involves finding facts concerning the physical aspects of property that are peculiar to the property, and variances that are granted run with the property in perpetuity. An example from that same meeting was a request by Mr. Burns that related to the concrete pad and the location, a future location, unless he's done it recently, of a caboose on his property in the Upper Graybeard area. We still want to know when that's big crane's gonna come so we can go watch. But that was an example of a variance process. The Fair Housing Act is based on individual disabilities of property owners. And that was the situation for the Elliott family who came to the Board of Adjustment. They live on Graybeard Road and they needed a walk-in shower. We have many older homes like their family home, and a few of us are getting older every day. And I really want, not Mr. Helms here. And
All of us are getting older.
I thought you said not me. And I want our ordinances to help with situations like the ones that the Elliots had. My motion instructs the zoning administrator to research better options for addressing these requirements of the Fair Housing Act in our ordinances, and then to send those to the group of citizens who are part of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they will have open meetings considering what the options would be, and then any proposals from that group come back to the town council to have a scheduled public hearing for additional input. So this isn't a quick process, but I think it involves citizens groups at several points along the way, and both the Planning and Zoning meeting and the public hearing would be options for times that the public could speak. But that's the reason for my motion regarding our adapting and making accommodations in a gentle way as we can with persons with disabilities.
I want to thank Commissioner Campbell for bringing this to our attention. I certainly had not paid any attention to this. I'm always hopeful it will not be an issue in our household, but I'm afraid it's going to be, you know, at some point in time. So I think it's, thank you. I really appreciate that, especially with all of our older homes, newer homes. There's been more built in for us as we age. Some people have had the foresight to construct their homes even years ago, considering the aging of the homeowners. But, you know, if you own a home from the 20s and 30s and 40s, that ain't the case. So thank you for bringing that to the board, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say and can recommend.
Anyone else?
I'll say one other. The reason for the seemingly unrelated part at the end of the motion about the front and back building setbacks is that this is something that I'd requested back in the spring, based also on things that I heard when I just attended as a citizen, as I did this last time, the Board of Adjustment meeting. When the request was to move the property, the potential home, closer to the road than our setbacks allowed. And it had to do with the actual lay of the land. The lot went out just a little bit and then it just dropped straight down. So they wanted to get the front of the house at the more level spot and then deal with the drop off with the way the house was constructed. So they both have been in line, that's been in line to be addressed. And I know that Planning and Zoning is working on stream setbacks that have also been requested, and that has something to do also with the unusual configuration of some lots and the ways the streams go across them. So we have a lot of challenges with our ordinances, and we need to stay busy with updating and seeing how we might improve them.
Anyone else? Okay, those in favor of requesting the zoning administrator to research better options for the fair housing?
Aye.
Aye.
5 in favor and none opposed. Now is the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. Your name and address in 3 minutes, please. Peter?
I'm Peter Boggs, 338 Chapman Road. I'd like to talk about the election coming up on November 3rd. I think that it's safe to say that all of us want compliance with North Carolina voting laws. However, I'm very concerned about a flyer that was posted in the post office last week and the week before. This is the flyer I'm talking about. Some of you may have seen it. I'm sure that the town council members are also concerned about this flyer. After all, several months ago, one of the town council members expressed outrage that one of our mailers, the one that was described as pumpkin colored, was sent out without a signature. Even though our pumpkin colored mailer did clearly state the name of our organization, provided an email address, a mailing address, and a telephone number. This yellow flyer did not have the name of an organization, did not have an email address, did not have a mailing address, and did not have a telephone number. The intention of this flyer seems to